History is on the march once again with Empire Total War, the latest in the long-running epic strategy series from the Creative Assembly. This time we leave the medieval era behind and cast off for the early modern era, a time of rapid colonial expansion and technological breakthroughs. Can the game live up to the same standards? Like its predecessors, Empire Total War is divided into two main gameplay modes. The turn-based strategic mode is where players manage their territories, make diplomatic and economic decisions, and assemble and mobilize their armed forces. Once battle is joined with an opposing force, the game switches to a real-time tactical mode, where armies comprised of hundreds upon hundreds of individual soldiers square off. In both the strategic and tactical modes, there are lots of details for the players to consider. How you decide to manage your territories and play with your neighbors can have immediate and enduring consequences. Treaties and alliances can be formed, technologies can be researched and swapped, and lasting friendships and bitter rivalries can be forged. It's a lot for the novice to take in, and a short campaign chronicling America's path to independence serves as a tutorial to cover the basics. Once comfortable, players will dive right into the main campaign. Here you choose from one of several major nations including Great Britain, France, Spain, Sweden, Russia, the Ottoman Empire, the Maratha Confederacy, and the 13 colonies. Filling in the rest of the world map are nearly 40 minor nations. Speaking of the map, there's a lot more ground to cover here than in earlier versions of Total War. In Empire, the game is split up into three main theaters: Europe, the Americas, and India. In addition, there are several minor trade theaters housed mostly at sea. This highlights a major advancement in the Total War series, as this is the first time naval battles can be resolved tactically. Empire Total War ships with online multiplayer that's relegated to tactical battles. The developers have promised a more robust multiplayer campaign mode in a future patch, but what's in the box is bare bones. Most of the other changes from earlier Total War games involve streamlining the strategic details, which were admittedly pretty daunting in Medieval and Rome Total War. Diplomacy is easier to understand and handle, as is doing things like setting tax rates. The technology tree is quite big, but it's pretty easy to figure out what the benefits are and what you'll need to research to get them. Aside from a greater emphasis on ranged weapons and the addition of naval warfare, the tactical battles remain the comfortable high point of the game. If only the game worked as well as the feature list suggests. There's a lot of stuff going on under the hood, but despite all the streamlining in the design, it's very hard for even an experienced player to figure out exactly why things are happening. Part of the problem is a simple lack of information. The instruction manual is extremely light on details, and digging around the numerous info screens isn't much help either. Seemingly simple tasks like finding out how many troops you've loaded onto a ship is nearly impossible. The kinds of things your special characters like gentlemen and rakes can do in the field is presented vaguely at best. Too many details about your economy, trade, and diplomacy remain convoluted. This is made all the worse by some incredibly inconsistent strategic AI, which is simply not up to the task of dealing with all the possibilities in the game. Diplomacy can be gamed in such a way that you can get nearly anything you want for very little in exchange. Enemy nations have a hard time handling troop movement between theaters, meaning a sea invasion isn't ever a credible threat. The tactical part of the game fares much better. The battle AI generally behaves intelligently. Enemy cavalry will attempt to flank or rush your artillery, leaping over fences and walls along the way. Ranged units will fire from cover or take the high ground when possible. It's never as simple as setting up your line and watching them fire away at the enemy. Formations and facing need constant adjustment. Your units will grow weary or perhaps even break at the sight of a horde of savage skirmishers. It's a nasty and glorious mess. However, there are still some issues. Artillery defenses in a fort are hard to set up effectively, and since they don't lead their targets well, you won't get more than 1 or 2 shots off before the enemy reaches the wall. Other units have pathfinding problems, especially near buildings and through gates. For their first outing, ship-to-ship battles are excellent. You have to factor in the direction of the wind, as well as the range and reload time of your cannons. However, with multiple ships to command and track, it gets very difficult to stay on top of things and manage your tactics well. You'll also notice the occasional AI hiccup. Wherever you find the AI in the game, one thing is for certain: Empire Total War makes a great first impression. From the sumptuous global map to the war-torn battlefields to the endless rolling ocean, this is one of the most gorgeous games available. Zoom in during a battle and you'll witness cinematic quality combat that's completely in your control. You'll observe your cavalry bear down and break through the line of riflemen. You'll see cannonballs ricochet down a field and through a tight formation. And there's nothing quite like that first volley of fire from your eager musketeers, followed by each individual unit frantically reloading so they can get off one more shot before the enemy does. The soundtrack has always been a high point of the Total War series. Once again, in Empire, it doesn't disappoint. Much like the earlier titles in the series, during the long, ponderous strategic part of the game, the music is subtle, yet appropriate given the historical time period. During battle, things ramp up with culturally stylish music for warfare. The new features and time period are definitely welcome, but it's disappointing that Empire Total War has so many minor glitches and oversights that mar an otherwise excellent experience. It's likely that these issues will be addressed in a patch, and the Creative Assembly has indicated as much. But for now, what we've got is a marvelous game with some significant stumbles and a stilted multiplayer mode.